Hi everybody. I'm going to talk to you about essay structure today. I know that you guys are working on an essay right now where you are comparing the two of the texts we've read and discussing the themes. So that's sort of what we call kind of a mixed genre essay where you're doing multiple different things within the essay. But regardless of the kind of essay you are writing, you must adhere to essay structure. We'll talk about this more later. That does not mean that all essays are the same by any means, but it does mean that if you have these basic elements down, internalized, memorized, and you really understand them, you can change your approach to essay writing. So I'm going to show you a really simple way to set up an essay first. Once you've mastered this, that's when you can start thinking about changing the way you do essays, okay? Before we do that, this is the broken leg. That is the incision. It goes down to about there. There's this weird incision up here. It's like just one hole or something. And then down there as well. I don't know what those are for. So if anybody knows that, let me know. And there's a plate, a metal plate that goes from here to here. And 3 metal screws all the way through the bone. So that's exciting, and my leg will never be the same. Okay, so essay structure. Let me get my leg out of the video so you don't have to look at it the whole time. Gosh, can't do it. There. Okay, good. All right, so essay structure. There are, gosh, it's not dark enough, is it? There are 3 basic parts to an essay. There is the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. So we're going to do it like this. Roman numeral 1 is the introduction. In the introduction, there are 3 main parts. We're going to call A, the hook, B, the background info, information, and C, the thesis statement. All right, let's break these down a bit. The hook is the way that you grab your audience's attention. So a word about hooks, a lot of times they're gimmicky and cliched and hackneyed. We don't want to do that. So when you guys have been writing your college essay, I was telling a lot of you to just start in the middle of your story. That works because your story becomes your hook, so to speak. It draws the audience in just immediately. Please try to avoid, I know a lot of you have been doing this and you've learned this through high school, but try to unlearn it. Don't start with quotations and don't start with questions. Those are techniques that they tell people to use when they're not really sure what to do for a hook, but the hook really is not that important. It's a good entry into an essay if you're not sure where to start or what to do, but don't rely too much on it. So just so you know, the hook grabs readers or audiences' attention. And I would start with the hook if you're having trouble getting started, and then cut it out if it's bad after the essay started, as you're editing. All right, the background information. It's kind of hard to write this way, so I don't think I'm going to write all of this out. Background information gives any information your reader needs to know to connect your hook or your thesis statement or to set up the thesis statement, okay? So, for instance, if you're doing a literary analysis essay for what you're writing for me right now, you're really analyzing literature, right? So you're going to need to do a little bit of background information about each text. So say you are comparing Burro Genius by Victor Villaseñor to Indian Education by Sherman Alexie. You need to do a brief summary of each of those texts, say who it's by, introduce them before getting into your thesis statement, because otherwise we don't know what you're talking about. You need to always assume that your reader does not have the information you have and has not read what you've read, okay? So that's background information. Any information your reader needs in order to better understand the rest of your essay, specifically the thesis statement. Now, the thesis statement is the most important part of all. Without a thesis statement, you do not have an essay. Without a thesis statement, you have a collection of paragraphs. The thesis statement is the point of your essay. It's the focus, it's the direction, it's really the purpose. Your purpose is always to prove that thesis statement. It's the main argument of the whole thing, okay? It's kind of the backbone. So we're going to call the thesis the main argument, point, or idea, or message, any of those would work, of the essay. All right, this is not working out as well as I'd hoped. I'm sorry that you can't see it. Perhaps I will try the pink one next. That might be a little bit better. All right, so that is part 1, Roman numeral 1. Part 1 of an essay is introduction. We are now going on to part 2, the body. All these notes from previous years are on the Instagram account also, so you can get them there in a more coherent way because they're all together. Okay, is this better? Yeah, let's try that. I think that's dark enough. All right, so body. We will call that Roman numeral 2, the body. The body of your essay has 5 parts. We will call them topic sentence, context, evidence, analysis, and interpretation, and right, A, B, C, D, E. Yeah, that's the alphabet. All right, and finally, closing sentence. All right, this writing is terrible and you can barely see it. So I'm gonna walk you through each one. Oh, sorry. I'm gonna walk you through each one of these things. Okay, so the topic sentence. This introduces, by the way, we've already gone over paragraph structure. I try to start with paragraph structure. So you have some context for essay structure when we get to it. All right, so paragraph structure is topic sentence that introduces the topic of your paragraph, okay? So this is what brings your audience into the understanding of what you're going to be talking about. So in a literary analysis essay, your topic sentence is going to be one of the supporting points of that thesis, okay? So if you're comparing, to go back to our example from before, Borough Genius and Indian Education, if your thesis statement is something like both students in the 2 stories learned in spite of education, not because of their schooling, that's a bad thesis. Man, I'm getting stuck here. Both students grow through their education because of the challenges they faced. Okay, that's also not a great thesis because it's not very specific, but it's an argument you can prove, okay? So if that was your argument, one of your first topic sentence in your body paragraph, you might want to make that an example of one of the challenges they faced and how they grew through that. So discrimination against them. All right, context. Context is where you introduce your evidence, okay? Most teachers, you're going to just see topic sentence evidence. I break context out because it's really important that you, just like in the intro, you have background information. It's really important that you have background information for each piece of evidence. So it's important that you are introducing this evidence to your audience rather than dropping in, and particularly if your evidence happens to be a quotation from the text. So what you would do for context is just give the background information that your evidence needs. Introduce the evidence, okay? That leads us to evidence. Evidence is the proof. Just like in a court of law, you want evidence of your argument. In an essay, you want evidence of your thesis statement or your topic sentence, which is what supports your thesis statement. So the evidence could be many different things depending on what the essay is about. If you're doing a research paper, It might be specific facts and figures and data that you need in order to support your thesis or the research you're doing. If you're doing a literary analysis piece, it's pretty much always a quotation from the text. So that is evidence. It's the proof, right? Generally, you want at least 2 pieces of evidence. In shorter pieces of writing, if one is sufficient, then that's okay. And the piece you're working on this week, since it's so quick, 1 is okay, although you're probably going to need 1 piece of evidence from both texts. So each body paragraph will probably have 2 pieces of evidence anyway. All right, let's go to analysis and interpretation. This is one of my favorite parts because this is where you do the work of showing why the evidence supports your topic sentence and therefore your thesis statement, because the topic sentence always supports the thesis statement. So analysis, write this down. I'm not going to, but try to write this down. Analysis means to break something into smaller pieces. Interpretation means to say what those pieces mean. This applies to anything in the world. So when I broke my leg, they had to take x-rays and CAT scans and MRIs. And when they took the x-ray, they analyzed the x-ray, right? They saw certain pieces of bone in the x-ray, and they broke down the information into smaller pieces and looked at the parts of the x-ray. Then they interpreted it by telling me what each part meant. Okay, so that's what analysis and interpretation means. So with a text, you're going to break it down by saying that in this part of the text, they are saying A, B, and C, and that supports your topic sentence. So it's where you're really, really breaking the text in your evidence into smaller pieces and then interpreting that, explaining it, saying why it does support your topic sentence. And then finally, your closing sentence. These can be tricky just because closing something is always tricky. But your closing sentence is where you basically just kind of loop back to your topic sentence. Don't ever repeat it, but you're kind of letting your audience know that you did prove and you did talk about what you said you were going to prove and talk about in this paragraph, okay? All right, finally, you have conclusion. So we'll call that Roman numeral 3, conclusion. A is restate, not repeat, thesis. B is to review supporting points. And C is to relate to world. Okay. All right, so restate the thesis. This is where you remind your reader, your audience, what argument you were trying to make at the beginning of this whole process, but you're not going to ever repeat it, right? We don't want to hear the same words, but you want to go back to that main idea and remind us that that's what you've been talking about, right? Restating your supporting points. Your supporting points are your topic sentences, so you're going to go over the points you used to prove and support that thesis statement. And then relate to the world. That's where you just, if there's a significance similar to the hook, it's a little bit broader. So if there's significance beyond your essay to the world and beyond the text you're analyzing and beyond whatever research you were doing to the world, that's when you can relate it to the world. Just like the hook, I'm going to tell you that this part is not the most important part, and if it's gimmicky or weird or hackneyed, don't worry about that, okay? So there's a couple more things I want to remind you of. I think I might go back to that blue marker if I can find it. All right. An essay, a good essay, is going to look like an hourglass. So an hourglass goes like this, right? Okay. The hook is the biggest part, okay? I mean, broadest part, like relating to everything. Same with relate to the world. Whereas, and the background is a little bit broad, but then the thesis is where things get specific, right? This is so important. And then this is the body, where you really narrow things down. And then as you get to the conclusion, restate thesis, and then review points, and then relate to the world. I know that that is not legible. I am sorry. All right. And then finally, what I wanted to remind you of is these 3 vocabulary words that I've been talking to you about since before I broke my leg. you want all of your essays, in fact, anything you put in writing ever, whether it's a note you're passing in class or a text message, since we don't really pass notes anymore, anything you put in writing, you want it to be these three things. You want it to be coherent, cogent, and cohesive. If you graduate from our school and from my class being able to write in these three ways, and that these three things can be said about your writing, then I will be very happy. Remember, coherent means that it's making sense. It logically fits together. It's not confusing. It doesn't distract or from itself, right? So you want your every topic sentence lines up with the thesis, and all the evidence lines up with the topic sentence. Therefore, your essay, like a spine, must be in complete alignment, okay? So you want it to logically make sense, okay, and hold together. Cogent, forcefully convincing. You want your arguments to be so logically true and so persuasive that they can be described as cogent. So you want to be a cogent arguer. This is a good skill to have in life as well. And then cohesive. You want it all to make sense and stick together, okay? So these things they work together to make excellent writing and really good essays. And when you have an essay like this, it makes it so much easier for me to grade as well. I've been pretty pleased with the writing I've seen so far for your college essays, but as that's personal writing, it's a different style than what you'll be doing as we move forward with the rest of the year. The last thing I want to say about essays is that there are many, many different kinds of genres of essays. Genre means type, right? So you have compare and contrast, you have literary analysis, you have narrative essays, but what the colleges are really moving forward, colleges and universities, at the collegiate level, they're moving beyond these kind of compartmentalized and boxed up approaches to writing to a more mixed way of approaching writing, a multi-genre way of approaching writing. So one of the essays we're going to read soon in class is called Incarceration, Education, Emancipation, and it's by a man named Eric Anthematum. I'm not sure I'm saying his last name correctly. And it is a beautiful example of what we call a mixed genre essay. So we're going to look at genred essays, the very kind of strict and specific kinds of essays, definitely literary analysis, but I'm also going to ask you to be moving forward towards mixed genre essays where there can be some personal elements as well as objective analysis of facts and figures as well as analysis of literature, okay? So our writing journey is really just beginning and I'm very excited, and I don't know the prognosis still for my leg. I still can't walk, but the pain is receding daily. And I'm starting to get some feeling back in the leg. There was a lot of nerve damage and ligament damage. If you guys watch football, the injury that J.J. Watts just got, I think that's the same. I don't watch football. It's a tibial plateau fracture. It's definitely season ending for him. He has to have surgery and it might be career ending, but I'm like praying that it's not because that would be so awful for him. But that's the fracture I have. And J.J. Watts, the last time I looked it up, does not have ligament damage, but I have damage. The whole LCL tore from the fibula. That's the one that's on the outside of my leg, and then all the ligaments behind my knee are sprained. So thankfully they did not tear, but they're all sprained. So it's a very long healing process, but at the very latest I will be back in the winter, and hopefully earlier than that. So I miss you guys. I hope you're well, and email me if you have any questions. You should all know my email by now, but it is drapeauleanne@gmail.com. All right. Love you. Miss you. Bye.